tangents are one of the most annoying things to deal with as a vegan outreacher, so today I'm going to talk about how you might try and deal with them. But before we get to the tips, we have to actually know what we're redirecting back to. You can't just escape a tangent to go nowhere. You have to actually have some core point that you're trying to explore. So for me, there's usually 4 core points I use during outreach. The animals we eat undergo an immense amount of suffering in farms and slaughterhouses. It's wrong to kill an individual that doesn't want to die and has an interest in living. We don't need to eat animals, and our taste, pleasure, and convenience don't justify it. What can the person do to not contribute to this? So whenever you escape the tangent, you need to go back to one of those core points. Now your core points can be different than mine. The point is you want to have some core points to go back to whenever you escape one of these tangents. So I think there's 2 main strategies for dealing with these tangents. The first is preemptive, and the second I'm calling postemptive. So preemptive is shutting down the tangent before it even gets started. Oftentimes this will happen when someone tries to bring up some unrelated political issue. And the prototypical case of this is abortion. So you'll be talking about sentience and someone will bring up, well, what do you think about abortion? So 9 times out of 10, this is a trap. You don't know how much they know about the abortion issue. You don't know what their position on abortion is. You might not know that much about the abortion issue. So there's very little reason to get into this topic. So how do you actually deal with it? Well, I'd say something like this. It's definitely an interesting and important topic, but today I'm here to talk about animal rights. And then you can add, once we're done with this conversation, I'd totally be willing to chat with you about it. Then redirect back to the core point you were on. Now only say you're willing to talk about it later if you're actually willing to talk about it later. If you're in the context of like doing an AV or a We the Free outreach, that might not really be tenable, but in the sort of outreach I do, I can definitely have a conversation with them afterwards. And the reason I include that is because I think it shows that you're not running away from the question. If you just simply don't answer, I think the person can sometimes feel like, ooh, I got them, because they won't answer this question. And so I like to tack that on to show you, I'm not running from the question. I'm not really afraid of the question. The reason I'm redirecting is because I'm focused on animal rights right now. All right, so postemptively gets a little trickier because it's not always clear that tangent is coming until you're already deep into the tangent. So how do you recognize one? Well, ask yourself if this topic has any strong connection to any of the core points of the discussion. If someone starts talking about homeless individuals or indigenous people or individuals with rare medical conditions, these can all feel like interesting topics around veganism, and they definitely are. But if they're saying this in response to a question about how they personally justify animal abuse, then you're on a tangent. And so here again, I'd use a similar phrase. I think this is an interesting and important topic, but I think we've gotten distracted from the core point. I wasn't asking you about homeless individuals or indigenous people or someone with a rare medical condition. I was asking you how you personally justify paying for this. And then you can add the same phrase as before where you'd totally be down to chat about this later after the animal rights discussion. Now, a similar topic to tangents is goalpost shifting, so I want to wrap up with how we might deal with that. So for me, most of the time this comes up whenever we get into like the veganism is expensive discussion. So a conversation might go like this. They'll say, veganism is expensive. And I'll say, actually, some of the cheapest foods in the supermarket are vegan. Oats, beans, lentils, potatoes, bread, pasta, etc. And then they'll often reply with, yeah, but vegan food takes longer to cook and low-income individuals don't have that sort of time. To which I'll reply with something like, actually, chopping tofu doesn't take any longer than chopping chicken. Frying tofu in a pan doesn't take any longer than frying chicken in a pan. And actually, in some ways, it takes less time because I don't have to be quite as meticulous with like disinfecting surfaces. I don't have to cook the tofu to a certain temperature, etc. And then they'll often reply with something like, yeah, but low-income individuals don't have time to learn all these new recipes. And that will just go on and on and on. And this can be hard to recognize in the moment, but the goalpost has actually shifted twice in that short conversation. So first we were talking about expense, then we were talking about the time to prepare food, and then we were talking about the time to learn recipes. Each of these are separate points, and so we want to address them separately. And it's actually good to address each of them separately because sort of in the heat of the moment, if you kind of just go down this rabbit hole and then there's kind of like a wishy-washy answer at the end, the person can walk away thinking that like they've refuted the points or that, oh, veganism is expensive, right? They're gonna kind of walk away with that general impression. So I think you need to put a pin in each one as you refute them and just make sure that you're both on the same page. So after you tell them about all the cheap vegan staples in the grocery store and they move the goalpost, just say something like, okay, so the cook time is a separate issue, right? So let's get to that in a second. But do we both agree that there's plenty of cheap vegan options and you can eat vegan cheaply? It's possible. And then only once they agree to that, then go on to the next goalpost shift, right? And I think even just highlighting the fact that the goalposts are shifting is valuable because oftentimes the other person doesn't realize it either. It's not like they're doing this in like a manipulative, intentional way. It's just something your brain does, especially when you're kind of like flailing or you feel like you're like losing in a debate or something. All right, so this video was a little different than most of the videos I shoot in that it wasn't fully scripted. So normally I'm like reading off of a teleprompter, but for this video, I didn't read off of a teleprompter. So let me know in the comments if A, you could tell a difference, B, you couldn't tell a difference. Did you like it better? Did you like it worse? Do you have no preference? I'm just trying to get some feedback because I may shoot videos like this in the future. So yeah, just let me know. And as always, you know, if you like what I do and you want to see me do this full time, consider checking out the Patreon. My patrons are amazing. I love you guys. You really are making this stuff possible. I've used the funds you've given me to get equipment, signs, cards. So it's really, really helping me out. I totally appreciate you guys. And shout out to Ryan O'Neill, Tom Eisenweiss, Nutbase News, and Matthew Lara.